with an expected action, with an envisioned purpose, those three things, you can trace that back every single time to a mind, to an intelligent source. Instructional information doesn't come about randomly. Even Einstein said that matter itself cannot organize itself into instructional information. They call that the Einstein Gulf. They even have a name for it. But the point is this: if in fact then you are talking about an intelligent source, how intelligent is it? Is it more intelligent than you are? You look like a smart person, but I don't think. Have you ever written a quaternary triplet code like this? Me neither. Nobody on Earth has. So what we're actually looking at, we're looking at an intelligence that has, there's a profile. Who had the capacity to be the cause of this effect, to be the cause of this kind of clear digital language that says, stop eating, caterpillar. Now it's time for you to turn into a cocoon and a chrysalis. Now you're going to turn into liquid. And that's the end of the story. Not the end of the story. Now you have digital information changing that caterpillar now into a creature that does have reproductive organs and proboscis and the antenna and all these things in a week and a half. How did that happen? Well, we're told it was supposed to happen randomly. Really? Randomly. Does that make sense to you? Digital software information just randomly putting together that kind of a program that gives life? To me, it doesn't. So you can come to a different conclusion. When I say that, I realize there's a whole community that would disagree with me because, of course, we're supposed to just agree that everything happened by chance. But when the evidence is taking you to a different direction, you say, well, why can't I just be free to follow the evidence? Well, there's a person named Richard Lewontin. He's actually alive right now. I was telling somebody, oh, I think he's already gone. Nope, he's still at Harvard. He's the leading evolutionary biologist and geneticist of Harvard. And he says this: our willingness to accept scientific claims that are against common sense, that's the key to an understanding of the real struggle between science and the supernatural. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of its tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism. See, that's not science, that's a worldview. It says, I don't care about the evidence, we have a commitment to materialism. You see, the problem is there are consequences to getting this wrong. You see, because the one who is the intelligent source hasn't been silent, has not been absent. He's the one who puts design in everything. In fact, you have kind of the other side of the debate here where you have Werner von Braun. He's the one that designed the Saturn rocket booster that put us on the moon back there in the day when we got on the moon in the 60s. He says, okay, you can't be exposed to the law and order of the universe without concluding that there must be design and purpose behind it all. In the world around us, we can behold obvious manifestations of an ordered, structured plan or design. Now, he's writing the California School Board of Education because every time he said design, it bothered them. They said, why are you saying that? We're trying to teach science here. You're a scientist. Are you saying we should teach design in the classroom? And he says, well, let me put this to you in the clearest way I can. Everywhere you look, it's obvious. The plan, the order, everything is, you can have experiments and they're uniformly repeatable because there are laws. Right? So there must be a lawgiver. He says, but I'm going to tell you what your problem is. It's going to help him out a little bit. While the admission of a design for the universe ultimately raises the question of oh, that's your problem, you don't like to think that there's a designer, a person behind it. Still, he says, the scientific method does not allow us to exclude data which lead to the conclusion that the universe, life, and man are based upon design to be forced to believe only one conclusion, that everything happened by chance. That would violate the very objectivity of science itself. So this is just good science talk here, you know. He says we should not be forced to go in a different direction than the evidence. He says, no, we are forced by our a priori adherence. But we have two opposite views, don't we? But if you ask me, that's the side that insists to science. And here's where it takes you. It doesn't just leave you standing in the water like, okay, well, that was interesting. Now we know that Wernher von Braun was a scientific kind of guy. No, we know this. There's a designer. Cause and effect says you got to go beyond the design to see there's an intelligence. Now, we call this the elephant in the room question. Did that designer ever say, here I am, showing us the good? And my thought, once upon a time, was, no, we wouldn't have all these different religions. If God had shown himself, it would be so plain that everybody said, there, that's the evidence right there. Well, it just so happens that 2019 years ago, that's how we date our calendar, right? Someone came into this world who had been foretold with more than 300 prophecies, detailed prophecies, like in Psalm 22, where David is saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? He's giving you the words of Christ on the cross. But then he goes further beyond what we read in the New Testament. And David says in Psalm 22, verse 16, he says, for the dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look at me, they stare at me. They part my garments among them, and they cast lots for my vesture. That's exactly what happened at the cross. David talking about the form of execution that had not yet been invented. God did that so that you and I, who are serious seekers, say, I just want the truth. If I don't have the kind of truth that blows away the competition and establishes the integrity of the one giving me that, I'm out. I'm not interested. I don't want religion. I didn't, anyway. So when I began to look for the truth, and I saw that's exactly what happened. Back then, that was 1973. So I was thinking, what happened 1,973 years ago? Now we're looking at 2019. And he's still the only one who came into this world in fulfillment of those detailed prophecies. When I talk about detail, and see, and it's a fit. This takes foresight, and so did it take foresight to be able to write the prophecies with the kind of detail that nobody could match except the ones who came into this world 2019 years ago. So people want to know, well, what are you talking about? You're talking about religion or you're talking about science? Well, we're not talking about religion. We are talking about science. And we're talking about the one who is the author of science as well, who also authored the prophecies that announced his coming to this world centuries in advance.